din is-sentenza ħanaqrajlkom eżatt kif inhi għaxan ħalli li tgerfex. The summer recess for the scholastic year for all 11-year students shall end on the last scholastic day of the second scholastic term. Il-mistoqsija jekk intom tasbux li hija diskriminatorja għal studenti persuni with disabilità li mod speċjali li ma jkunux ħajersqu għall-eżamijiet tagħhom tas-sek. U jekk iva, x'inhi soluzzjoni?
ħaħares li mod ieħor. Mela, ejja naħduha pass pass. Id-Dipartiment ta' Edukazzjoni jien kont tiġi qabel l-tjiem. Konna naraw illi meta jisiru l-MOOCs, l-eżamijiet tal-MOOCs fi frar, kif ikonna ħafna tfal, ħafna studenti tal-Year 11 illi jgħidu xhur għal l-iskola. Jibqgħu jippreparaw rufushom għas-sekk. Rajna dak iż-żminijiet biex kif ħansolvu din il-problema. Il għaliex kif tafu il-liġi tal-edukazzjoni tajt illi bil-5 snin 16 sena huwa compulsory school age u allura kien tim mill-frar qudiem ma tiġi l-iskola. Ifisser tikser il-liġi. Mela s-soluzzjoni kienet kont niltaqa' mal-prinċipali u d-diretturi li kelli u fil-ELC dak iż-żmien Education Leadership Committee fis-sajf u naraw meta ħajjiġi meta se tiġi l-Easter holidays. Ġieli ġew f'Marzu, ġieli ġew f'April, internament konna niddeċiedu il-cut-off point meta tkun il-compulsory date illi l-istudent tal-Year 11 irriġi l-iskola. Ma teskludix imma l-istudent jkollu diffikultajiet jista' xiġi għand it-teachers tiegħu biex jara diffikultà li jkollu. Ma teskludix l-ebda student ieħor li mhux se jagħmel is-SEC examination milli jkompli his educational journey. Jiġifieri ħafna minn dawn it-tfal li kienu jkunu fis-CCP, l-sena ma kienu kienu jibqgħu sal-aħħar tal-sena skolastika. Dawn ma kienu se jagħmlu s-SEC, issa. X'inhi l-issue ta' din il-klawżola fl-agreement? Il-klawżola fl-agreement qed jgħidlek all students, jiġifieri whatever, inkluż kulħadd, jiġifieri sa ħadd tat-tieni term jattendu wara hemmhekk m'għandhomx jattendu. Issa, li ovvjament ħolqot paniku sħiħ u ħana bħala li ħafna ġenituri jistaqsu fuqha din. Issa, jekk inti tħares leha fuq diskriminazzjoni ma l-istudenti mhijiex diskriminazzjoni ma l-istudenti għax inta tgħid il-kulħadd mela bħala what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Biss il-UNCRPD tidħol ukoll pass ieħor quddiem. Inti waħda mill-problemi li ħajkollok ma' dawn l-istudenti li ma jistgħux jattendu li mhux se jagħmlu s-sekk hija se jixri minnhom dawn minn April sa Ġunju, Lulju. Meta tispiċċa s-sena skolastika. Mela hawnhekk għandek problema, sawa? Jiġifieri jekk aħna qed tħares lejn il-ħsieb tal-marra taħdem, jiġifieri nkorreġi xulħadd jaħdem, sawa? Ġenituri bħal dawn ma jistgħux jaħdmu se twaqqafhom inti xi ħaġa tisir. Imma, hemm ukoll ruling tal-European Court of Justice. Li huwa ferm interessanti. Illi minkejja li kien simili ta' dawn li tħattu li diskriminazzjoni fuq il-persuna b'diżabilità ma hemmx. Biss qed tidiskrimina kontra il-familja. U hawnhekk fejn qatat ovvjament favur il-persuna għax inti diskriminazzjoni xorta hemm mhijiex diretta mal-persuna imma diretta mal-familja. Jiġifieri diskriminazzjoni hemm. ħankun onest, kif taħlet hemmhekk kif ma nafx dika qatt ma taħlet fil-agreement qabel. Kont qed nisemma qabel jien huwa internal communication bejn DG u l-iskejjel li niftehmu f'dak iż-żmien. Din daħlet issa tassattiva issa. X'jista' jsir? Jien nara żewġ toroq li jistgħu jsiru. One kemm il-bona volonta min-naħa tal-ġiex naħat li żgur bil-Education and Board of da ma tiġ dubju minn lejdi. Għarġammur mal-mejda ta' diskussjoni u nagħmel attendum biex nispjega dik xi tfisser. U nista' ngħid tisma' all students ngħidu konna nirreferu, all students dak ħajmorru sekk. Għad tifhem? U toħroġ minnha hekk. Imma ovvjament għandek il-parti l-oħra li taqbel miegħek inti l-għonin. Which is the biggest hurdle nara jien. Jew, ovvjament, jinħoloq program, all right, fejn semmi tajjeb id-diġi, li tiena hawnhekk hija t-tranzizzjoni. Tranzizzjoni hija importanti ħafna. U hawnhekk fejn jista' jħoloq programm ta' tranzizzjoni, sewa, wieħed iħares taqra li lajbi u l-bossa lejbi li kellu dak l-istudent, u jara fiex leħqu ma tleħqux, x'jista' jsir, x'inhi l-viżjoni tal-istudent għal-futur tiegħu.
Dik tkun is-soluzzjoni, il-programm ta' tranzizzjoni.
Dan
il-perjodu. Dal-perjodu ta' bejn l-aħħar ġurnata.
Jien dik li nara personalment.
Bernard.
Fejn qed indaħlu l-kunċett tal-occupational therapist fil-klassi li tkun qed tgħin anke lill-għalliema tiegħek ċertu tips ġieli jkunu environment, ġieli jkunu eżempju ċertu techniques li tista' tuża biex tkun tista' tilħaq iktar it-tfal. Mbagħad għandek it-tieni livell fejn inti tibda tidentifika forsi xi diffikultajiet ta' tfal wara jkollok bżonn li tagħti parir lill-għalliema li huwa iktar speċjalizzat. Għat-tielet livell fejn imbagħad għandek tfal li jkollhom iktar challenges li allura mbagħad immorru għal sistema li hija iktar one-to-one. Però mill-feedback li għandi fil-pilot project intlaqa tajjeb mill-iskejjel, aħna ma ninsewx illi tipikament il-klassi naraw l-għalliema. L-għalliema hija l-esperta fit-tagħlim, però jiena waħda minn dawk illi nemmen li l-għalliema għandha bżonn ukoll input ta' professionals oħra li jtuha perspettiva differenti ta' kif tista' tilħaq il-diversità kbira illi għandna fil-klassijiet illum il-ġurnata mhux biss in terms ta' diżabilità, in terms anka ta' studenti barranin, in terms ta' social backgrounds, ġifieri d-diversità fil-klassi tant hija enormi illum il-ġurnata li jiena waħda minn dawk illi nemmen bisħieħ illi l-għalliema għandhom bżonn professjonisti oħra mhux neċessarjament il-ħin kollu fil-klassi, imma illi ituhom dawn it-tips perspettivi differenti ta' kif nistgħu nilħqu l-itfal kollha fl-istess setting.
U da servizz b'xejn. Mhux hekk għax kien hemm dik l-issue tal-ispejjeż ukoll. Ħana ftit għax di kontent naħseb fiha qabel ma nibda mill-biċċa xogħol tal-edukazzjoni. Intom ħafna minnkom ġejjin minn setturi differenti, mis-settur tad-diżabilità, jew tmissu miegħu ma tmissu miegħu. Meta tisimgħu dawn l-affarijiet f'sentenza waħda, tistgħu tgħiduli x'taħsbu li min-naħa tagħkom tistgħu tagħmlu aħjar fis-settur tagħkom, qed nitkellem mhux għal nies bħal Bernard li ġejjed fis-settur, imma nies bħal Joe li jmiss miegħu ma mhux direttament fis-settur. Xi ħaġa waħda li taħsbu li tistgħu tagħmlu aħjar għal dawn in-nies fis-settur tagħkom. Ħanbdew hekk ħalli ma noqgħodx nażel. Ma jista' dinbiċċa xogħol dan ma jfhimx.
Naħseb li nistgħu nagħmlu.
Tajjeb.
By the way, jena m'għadniex nikkoordina l-kursi tal-LSEs.
Skużani.
Le, biex li jista' jkun ċaħtu jikkuntattja l-Jamras fuq dawk il-korsijiet mhux lili. Jena qiegħed id-Deputy Director fuq Inclusive Education.
Okay, all right.
Naħseb li nistgħu nagħmel min-naħa tagħna tal-MCAS hija li noħolqu aktar kuxjenza dwar il-bżonnijiet ta' persuni b'kondizzjonijiet jew diżabilitajiet varji, sabiex noħolqu aktar kultura li fiha l-istudenti jistgħu jintegraw seamlessly fil-korsijiet tagħna u anki dan isir viżjoni lejn id-dinja tax-xogħol fejn nafu li mhux dejjem il-postijiet tax-xogħol disponibbli għall-istudenti tagħna ikunu fully accessible.
Grazzi. Ivivi. Li għaliex tnem is-CRPD. Għalhekk għax qed nistaqsi lil dawk li jmissu miegħu is-settur. Għax bħali aħna nisimgħu fuq u ma mmissu miegħu mhux qed naħdmu direttament fih. Għalhekk.
Jiena jekk tippermettili Mark żewġ affarijiet kieku fis-settur tagħna tal-edukazzjoni. Number one naħseb illi għandna bżonn iktar nisimgħu l-esperjenzi tan-nies. Fis-sens illi min forsi m'għandux diżabilità jew qatt ma mis diżabilità bħali eżempju li jiena Direttur Ġenerali tal-Education ma jfissirx li fil-verità naf kollox fuq id-diżabilità. Meta inti tibda tisma' il-persuna, meta tibda tisma' l-esperjenza tagħha, inti ovvjament fil-pożizzjoni tiegħek tibda tirrifletti kif inti il-persuna tista' tgħin aħjar xi kultant ma jkunux changes kbar li għandek bżonn tagħmel, imma li fil-verità tkun qed tiffaċilita l-aċċess għall-kurrikulum, l-aċċess għall-iskejjel, eċetera, eċetera. Ġifieri l-ewwel waħda. It-tieni waħda naħseb li bħala settur tal-edukazzjoni għandna bżonn naħdmu iktar fuq il-kunċett ta' tranzizzjoni. Ġifieri aħna naħseb bħala settur xi kultant naħdmu wisq f'compartments, ma inti għandek is-sistema għandek il-primarja, l-middle school, sekondarja, eċetera, eċetera. U xi kultant ninsew, u m'għandix taqsam biss id-diżabilità ta' fil-verità huwa l-bniedem li meta bniedem ħajkun qiegħed jiffaċċja tranzizzjoni, change, għandu bżonn iż-żmien tiegħu biex jifhem iċ-change li ħajkun qiegħed dieħel fih biex is-sistema tadatta għal bżonnijiet tal-persuna u għara naħseb għandna bżonn nirriflettu iktar kif it-tranzizzjonijiet isiru b'mod li l-persuna tgħinha tgħaddi minn stadju għal ieħor.
Il-profs?
Jiena naħseb meta nibdew nirrealizzaw li dak kollu li nagħmlu għad-diżabilità fil-fatt jaħdem ħafna aħjar u jgħin lil persuni so-called qabbli, hemmhekk nibdew verament naħdmu b'mod seamless. Għaliex xi kultant il-problema tagħna hija li dejjem nħarsu lejn id-diżabilità bħala problema. Fil-realtà, id-diżabilità tista' tkun problema jekk nagħmluha problema, imma jekk id-diżabilità tgħinna biex nagħmlu s-sistemi tagħna iżjed aċċessibbli, ħajkun aċċessibbli għal kulħadd. Il-bankina li semmiet mhijiex biss perikoluża għad-diżabbli, ovvjament persuna diżabbli ma jgħaddix jekk għaddej wheelchair, inti mhux ħatgħaddi bil-bankini, minn ħafna bankini tagħna, però jekk inti għaddej biex normali bankina tiela u niżla, il-probabilità li tweġġa fuqha hija hemmhekk ukoll. Allura meta qegħdin nagħmlu bankina aċċessibbli, qegħdin nagħmluha għal kulħadd. U din tot għal kull livell, għal kull servizz li jingħata fis-soċjetà.
Żommu aktar fil-qosor, orajta ġifieri ma żommu Esmeralda naħseb fil-ħin.
Tajjeb. Jiena nixtieq nappella għal common sense. Ħafna affarijiet huma kwistjoni ta' common sense. Għandna nippruvaw infakru n-nies li empowerment is a mixture of responsibilities and rights, not just rights alone, but also responsibility. U xi kultant meta inti tista' tispjega eżjed is-servizzi tiegħek x'inhuma eżattament, tgħin il-klijentela li hija f'dal każ diżabbli jew qed ifittxu xogħol fil-każ tagħna tal-LSF, tgħinhom jifhmu where we can start, where we can end our service and support, what rights are yours, but also what responsibilities come with them. U naħseb hija importanti dik għax nevitaw ħafna broad statements u broad brush approaches li mhux dejjem japplikaw għal kulħadd.
Kumment minn għand Joe u nsaqsi lil tal-education.
Fil-qasam tax-xogħol u kellna żel punt wieħed li għandhom jippuxxew l-employers huwa opportunitajiet ta' xogħol. Opportunitajiet
Għax m'hemmx biżejjed.
Opportunitajiet li idealment kull min għandu kull forma ta' diżabilità u jixtieq jaħdem għandu jkollu l-opportunità li jagħmel hekk, jew kien għandu jistablu xogħol illi jkun paragun għall-abilitajiet tal-persuna. Allura meta qed ngħid opportunitajiet ta' xogħol ifisser ukoll akkomodazzjoni għax bla dubju f'ċertu ċirkostanzi jkollok tagħmel akkomodazzjoni wkoll. Allura naħseb dik hija ħaġa li l-kumpanniji għandhom jirsistu għalija, għandhom jalbu għalija.
Oliver m'għandek xalfejn għax inti ġeqed fis-settur. Nixtieq nistaqsi li speċifikament ħanejdilkom bil-first names ħalli ma nitgerfxux li Ritien, il-Colin u l-Joseph fuq l-edukazzjoni. L-iskel tal-istat joffru dak li jgħidulu l-Core Curriculum Program għal persuni diktar li għandhom disabilitajiet u ADHD u autism. Għalfejn ma hemmx programmi ftit iktar speċjalizzati li they are iktar tailor-made għal studenti b'mod speċjali bid-disabilità u bl-ADHD?
Mela, fil-compulsory schooling, ġifri bejn 3 to 16, edin nintroduċu issa il-konċett ta' accredited programs, ġifri da l-lonċjajni anka tru l-Istrateġija Nazzjonali tal-Edukazzjoni, fejn aħna din nirrikonoxxu illi t-tfal jitalmu b'mod differenti li l-kurrikulum tagħna jista' jkun li xi kultant qed ikun riġidu iżejjed u li allura għandna bżonn il-kunċett ta' programm illi jilħaq iktar il-bżonnijiet ta' tfal. Bdejna pilot project fejn identifikajna numru ta' studenti illi fil-waqt li rispettajna l-kurrikulum huwa magħmul minn dak ngħidulhom learning area sem ċertu learning area se inti bil-fors trid tkopri. Li l-programm iktar milli għandek għall-argument 5 lezzjonijiet Malti, 5 lezzjonijiet Ingliż, il-history, social science, etc. Jażel xorta suġġetti mod iktar ridott, intuhom iktar hands-on experiences anka bil-blajnuna ta' mentor biex aħna l-tfal iktar inżommuhom l-iskola u japprezzaw ukoll il-valur edukattiv li mhuwiex biss is-suġġetti akademiċi. Barra minn hekk, ftaħna wkoll numru ta' reach units fil-middle school u fis-sekondarji fejn inti għandek programmi bbażati fuq functional curriculum fejn inti tilħaq il-bżonnijiet tal-istudenti. Bħala sistema wkoll ħankunu qegħdin nagħmlu reviżjoni qawwija tal-kurrikulum, ġri qegħdin naraw illi l-kurrikulum preżenti fil-verità barra li huwa riġidu huwa bbażat fuq kunċetti li mhux neċessarjament it-tfal tagħna ħajġu bżonnhom għada pitada anke għad-dinja tax-xogħol, anke biex ikunu ċittadini attivi fis-soċjetà. U allura ħankun qegħdin nirrevedu kemm is-silabi u kemm il-kurrikulum biex inkunu nistgħu nofru iktar programmi speċjalizzati skont il-bżonnijiet tat-tfal.
Se jkun qed jiġi revised il-curriculum.
Iva, bdejna l-proċess għandna l-NCF Review Board huwa proċess li ħajdum ħafna fis-sens illi inti kull industrija, kull aspett soċjali, kulħadd ikun jixtieq il-biċċa tiegħu fil-kurrikulum nazzjonali, kulħadd jgħidlek illi s-settur tiegħu tant huwa importanti li importanti li fil-kurrikulum ikun hemm iktar lezzjonijiet. Aħna l-compulsory schooling dejjem ngħidu it's general education. Aħna qed niffurmaw ċittadini. Maħniex qegħdin neċessarjament nippreparawhom għax-xogħol partikolari, qegħdin nipproduċu ċittadini. Allura huwa eżerċizzju fejn inti trid tara l-interessi tas-soċjetà, is-soċjetà l-fejn sejra, l-industrija l-fejn sejra, u ssir ir-reviżjoni tipprepara lill-għalliema wkoll għax hija bidla kbira biex fl-aħħar mill-aħħar ikollha xi ħaġa li hija relevanti.
Irridu noqogħdu attenti li dawn is-servizzi ma nkomplux nżidu
l-istituzzjonalizzazzjoni.
Illi noħolqu narġgħu immorru lura. Niftakru meta sar l-Spiteri Report, George kien membru sabina fien f'dak kien ingħata suġġeriment biex nitbedu mill-special schooling, segregated schooling, u mmorru iżjed għal mainstreaming fejn is-servizzi jingħataw fil-lokal, jingħataw fil-klassi, jingħataw fl-iskola. U naħseb din hija importanti huwa prinċipju importanti illi kull bidla li jkun hemm irridu inwettqu. It-tieni punt li nixtieq ngħid huwa daħlu ħafna changes illi l-intenzjoni kienet tajba. Però ħafna drabi spiċċajna illi neħħejna il-flessibilità. Jiġifieri anke l-għalliema nfushom, anke il-sistemi nfushom, daħħalna pereżempju l-outcome-based learning, l-idea kienet li tiftaħ li inti għandek perjodu ta' żmien, niftakru qabel ma saru l-outcome-based learning, kien hemm dokumenti oħor li l-istess li inti għandek outcomes illi within these 2 years, within these 3 years inti ħatilħaqhom. Ħalli inti tagħti ritmi differenti għal bżonnijiet ta' tfal li hemm. X'beda jiġri però? Illi dawn saru eżamijiet żgħar kontinwi bi problemi li qegħdin joħolqu illi fejn qiegħed it-tagħlim. U allura importanti ħafna li anka fl-edukazzjoni inħallu dak li huwa flessibilità għaliex fir-realtà jekk m'għandekx flessibilità diffiċli ħafna li inti takkomoda l-bżonnijiet ta' tfal differenti fil-bżonnijiet tagħhom kollha. Ġifieri l-idea għandha tkun flessibbli, policies għandhom ikunu flessibbli, ħalli nkunu nistgħu nakkomodaw. Għaliex fl-edukazzjoni nitkellmu xi ħadd semmija fil-fatt. it-transazzjoni, it-tranzizzjonijiet li jagħmlu minn sena għal sena, u mbagħad bil-aħħar sena tal-iskola biex jmorru għad-dinja tax-xogħol jew għal higher education. Il-problema hija jekk inti f'dawk is-snin ma tajtomx bażi akademika tajba biex ikunu jistgħu jimxu sa d-dinja tax-xogħol, allura inti għalaqtilhom bih. Għaliex l-industrija mhux ħassibhom lesti biex jagħmlu xogħol hemmhekk għax m'għandhomx the basic skills. Jiġifieri hemmhekk irridu noqogħdu attenti illi meta din nitkellmu fuq edukazzjoni jrid ikollna iva curriculum sod imma flessibbli li jipprepara lil kulħadd. Infatti nitkellmu ħafna fuq l-all. Curriculum should be for all, not for the 40%, 50% of the students, imma for all. U hemmhekk dik il-flessibilità sal-aħħar, ġifieri f'dawk il-11-12 sena li għamlu fis-sistema għall-inqas jkollhom il-bażi li permezz tagħha jkunu jistgħu jimxu sa għal din oħra b'mod komdu.
Ma nafx tista' tgħaddi l-mikrofon hawnhekk għal Joseph tagħlek.
Mela, l-idea li studenti b'xi kundizzjoni jew diżabilità tkun xi tkun jeħtieġu korsi speċifikati għalihom jaf tkun xejn perikoluża kif qed jassemma hawnhekk, illa għaliex fil-verità mbagħad l-outcome ikun li l-istudenti b'kundizzjoni jew xi diżabilità ikollhom inqas options milli għandhom studenti oħrajn. U kif se tiddetermina kif ħanagħmlu ġifieri studenti applika li hemm każ ta' xandu autism mela inti tista' tagħżel from A to C u studenti ieħor jista' jagħżel from A to F. Ġifieri dik tkun problematika. Aħna l-MCAST l-istruttura tal-MCAST hija minnha nnifisha inclusive, it's inclusive by design. Ġifieri għandek il-korsijiet kollha huma miftuħin għal kulħadd, irrispettivament mid-diżabilità, li tagħmel differenza hija l-kompetenza. Ġifieri inti jekk inti għandek autism imma inti akademikament b'saħħtek, mela inti tista' tidħol fil-livell rispettiv. Jekk inti għandek autism imma akademikament għandek ċerti diffikultajiet, mela allura tista' tidħol f'livell iktar bażiku. Għandek iċ-ċans ukoll li tipprogressa, jiġifieri ma jfissirx għax dħalt livell inqas ħatibqa' fl-istess livell. Ħaġa oħra li xtaqt insemmi hija li aħna li nagħmlu huwa li l-istudent nissapportjawh biex jilħaq il-miri fit-tagħlim bħal studenti oħrajn. Mela, il-filosofija hija inti tista' tidħol fejn fil-livell li tista' tidħol skont l-requirements, imma aħna ħanissapportjawk biex tilħaq l-istess livell tal-istudenti l-oħrajn. Għal xiex, għaliex il-korsijiet tal-MCAST iwaslu għal kwalifika, imma wkoll ħafna mill-korsijiet iwaslu għal ċertifikazzjoni. Ġifieri inti pereżempju jekk tieħu il-kors tal-diploma tal-level 3 in Health and Social Care. Nsejtu eżatt, ma tal-Health and Social Care. Li apparti li hija kwalifikat level 3, hija wkoll ċertifikazzjoni għall-istudent li jista' jaħdem bħala carer. Mela mhux l-impjegant ħajserraħ fuq l-MCAST illi l-istudent huwa ċertifikat bħala carer. Jekk tieħu pereżempju level 3 tal-ICT, daka ifisser illi student jista' jaħdem bħala technician. Mela, we're after not simply a qualification, but also a certification. Jekk tieħu per eżempju il-level 4, l-advanced diploma tal-pharmaceutical technicians. Ġifieri dik hija certification ukoll. Mela, il-livell irid jintlaħaq, ma nistgħux innaqru biċċa minn hawn minn hemm. Mela, la ma nistgħux innaqru biċċa minn hawn minn hemm tal-kors għax inkella l-kwalifika u ċ-ċertifikazzjoni ma tibqax rilevanti li nagħmlu huwa ngħidu ħanaraw x'nistgħu nagħmlu biex l-istudent jilħaq dik iċ-ċertifikazzjoni. U nibdew pereżempju ħanieħdu każ ta' student bl-autism. X'jista' jsir f'każ bħal dan? Mela, nistgħu nibdew pereżempju fil-bidu qabel ma jibda l-kors, l-istudent niltaqgħu miegħu, go through the documentation, etc. Nistgħu nagħmlu pereżempju orientation tour jekk l-istudent iħossu daqsxejn anzjuż jew jista' jkun ma jħossux daqshekk komdu sakemm jiffamiljarizza ruħu mal-premises, dik issir fil-bidu tas-sena, nistgħu nlaqqgħu l-istudent u l-ġenitur jekk ikun jixtieq mal-deputy director u xi staff ieħor ta' dak l-institute biex nigwidaw aħjar fuq x'ħajkun mistenni minnu fil-kors. Nistgħu nagħmlu map session ngħidulha fil-bidu tas-sena wkoll fejn nlaqqgħu il-lecturers kollha li ħajkun qed jagħmlu dak l-istudent biex ninformawhom dwar il-bżonnijiet tiegħu u naraw x'arranġamenti jistgħu jsiru f'kull suġġett, jiġifieri li nagħmlu literalment f'dik il-map session hija li nduru suġġett wara li introduċu l-istudent u l-kondizzjoni u l-bżonnijiet tiegħu. Il-kull lecturer saqsuh mela wara li inti smajt dan. X'taħseb ħajkunu il-barriers għal dan l-istudent biex jagħmel il-kors u biex jaċċessa l-assessment. U allura x'taħseb li jistgħu jkunu il-modifikazzjonijiet li hemm bżonn isiru biex l-istudent ikun jista' jaċċessa dak il-kurrikulum. Imbagħad nagħtu wkoll support ta' one-to-one extra support sessions matul is-sena. U anka matul is-sena jekk ikun hemm bżonn ta' support ieħor, jinnaf la student jersaq għal xi placement jew jekk jinqalgħu xi diffikultajiet, dak dejjem nidħlu biex nissapportjaw. Ġifieri l-idea hi inti tista' tidħol għall-kors, aħna ħanikgwidawk u ħanissapportjawk biex tilħaq l-istess livell. Huwa modelli li naħseb li qed jaħdem aħna fil-fatt din is-sena sa issa sal-lum jekk inħarsu nagħtu ħarsa lejn in-numru ta' studenti b'autism fil-livelli tal-MCAS għandna pereżempju fil-level 1 u 2 għandna 36 studenti bil-autism, level 3 għandna 28, level 4 84 studenti bil-autism u level 6 għandna 47. Ġifieri level 6 qed ngħidu degree level għandna 47 student li huma bil-autism. Jekk inħarsu lejn studenti b'ADHD fil-levels 1 u 2 għandna 48, level 3 għandna 62, level 4 għandna 145 u level 6 degree level għandna 75 students bl-ADHD. Jiġifieri il-numri qegħdin hemmhekk għalkemm ma nħarsux biss lejn in-numri. Imma jidher li minkejja ovvjament l-ispazju biex nimmeljoraw is-servizz jidher li qed inkunu effettivi.
Ma nafx ma fil-qosor Ritien.
And I would like to talk about a few points. One of them is the general quality of pavements and streets who are extremely slippery or with a lot of barriers, even for people who can walk normally, let alone for those like me who can't really walk normally anymore.
Even the new ones,
Even the new pavements,
Okay.
even the new streets.
Okay.
I would like to suggest that for starters, pavements are covered with tarmac like good street and roads are. I noticed that in order to avoid slipping, I usually have to walk in the streets just because the pretty paving is dangerously slippery. Apart from the fact also that even when the pavements are properly designed, somebody wants a permanent ramp for his or her garage, and to hell with anybody, with workers and anybody else. So this wasn't like this in the 60s. You were supposed to use wooden ramps for a few minutes, get the car out, close the garage, put the ramps back, It's no longer being done. People seem to be demand that just because they can afford the garage, they are entitled to ruin the pavement for everybody else so that they can go up and down quickly in their fancy cars. And another thing, about accessibility. There are huge problems at the law courts, especially in the pavements. Yes, you can get down there with an elevator when it works and when it's available, okay, there's an elevator. But when you get there and you need to see a file, you are expected to stand up. A few months ago, I had to go there, and I dared very arrogantly use a seat that nobody was using. And there was this guy, I don't know whether he was a lawyer or what you call a procurator, and he said, "Look, lady, we pay for these." And I actually had to stand up, and then I made a scene with somebody, and somebody brought a chair for somebody else to accommodate me, so that I could look through files while sitting down. I wasn't provided with a pen table, but I was supposed to be grateful. So the law courts are a huge source of discrimination. And another thing, I would like to ask why that somebody mentioned disability equity training, which is available for institutions, for businessmen, I think. What about, is this training available for people like me who are just nobodies, but who feel that they can benefit from this training?
Okay.
And one thing I would like to, there was this issue of deinstitutionalization. Please beware that deinstitutionalization, especially for places like Mount Carmel Hospital and Villa Monsignor Gondi, will not be used just to accommodate private enterprises who want to grab those beautiful areas which are prime areas, like happened with St. Luke's. It was practically privatized now. I feel that places like Mount Carmel Hospital and Villa Monsignor Gondi are on the way to being privatized, taken over, seized by business and interest under the guise of institutionalization. A lot of institutionalization for certain cases will always be required. I cannot imagine certain people who had certain disabilities at Villa Monsignor Gondi or at Mount Carmel Hospital being provided with a house or flat that has all they can get at those institutions. So this idea of deinstitutionalizing everybody is a non-starter and very unjust from its own concept. Thank you.
If there are a couple of other questions here, they have to answer now. Alright, okay, answer, because it's going to drag on. It's not your fault, Tajvir, because I'm trying to think of the time.
I'll start with the easy question. This training we do is open to all general public. You can go on our website or call us at the commission. We can do, yes, a one-to-one session. You can also come to our offices if you like. If there are those who cannot travel for some reason or another, we can also hold this training online.
Okay.
Il-banking. Mela, banking ġetta kbira, dak raġun sinjura. Sfortunatament, fil-waqt illi il-Kommissjoni tintalab tivvettja il-bini, il-permessi tal-bini, permessi tal-bankini ma jgħaddux minn taħtna. Jiġifieri, aħna m'għandna l-ebda kontroll fuq kif issir il-bankina. Meta xi ħadd jgħid nisma' fit-triq tagħna qed issir il-bankina, aħna mmorru nippruvaw nintervjenu kemm nifilhom. Imma il-poter biex nintervjenu ngħidu isma' il-poter huwa dak li x'qasam l-ippjanar. Jekk ma tibniex tajjeb, jekk il-pjanta mhix magħmula li tkun aċċessibbli once li tinbena, permess ma jinħareġlekx. Jekk tibni ħażin, il-Kummissjoni ma tikx il-compliance certificate, jiġifieri ma tistax tapplika dawn l-ilma. Dak il-konċett fuq il-bankini sfortunatament ma jeżistix. U aħna qegħdin nippuxxjaw biex dan jiddaħħal, alright? Kif qed tgħid inti għall-pajjiż, se ngħidu għall-pajjiż biex ma nikkuntax. Il-karozzi miktar importanti minn nies. fejtlu bankini. Alright? Ġuri, jina mor fuq postijiet darba kien hemm perit tat-toro li talbitni biex immur fuq post. Il-ġlied li kien hemm għax il-bankina ħadd tiġi iktar għolja u iktar baxxa meta kulħadd bena kif rid, okay? Imma l-bankina qed jipprova li tiġbed average ħalli ma jkunx kisa il-baħar Forza 6 grigalata bħal San Paolo, alright? Kulħadd omos, kien hemm waħda partikolarment li kellha il-drive-in kien vera għoli il-parapet. U l-bankina biex ma tiġix tiraw niesla, ridita illi jolluha ħafna. U tibdi tgerger minħabba omma illi tuża l-walker u ma tkunx tista' tdaħħalha. Ettela sinjur, ettela inti bnejt għoli iktar mill-livelli tat-triq, ettela tista' tagħmel biex inti tbaxxi il-livell tal-parapet u ma kellix ġifieri Villarrigo biex tirranġa, right? Taf x'għamlet? Imbagħad itnieħdu u telqet il-ġewwa. Ġifieri din tippretendi li l-istat jirrovina bankina warrajt biex toqgħod titlaw niesla ħalli tkun moqdija u huma. Imma hi toħroġ xi ħaġa bil-bot biex tirranġa it-taffiċ li sar ma' żmien u timprovja il-sitwazzjoni għal-omma ma rridx. Ġifieri f'dan l-istat qegħdin l-iktar ninkwetaw illi tħokkli il-qieħ tal-karozza u m'għandix taqsam hekk fensi jew le il-karozza. U iktar milli dak li jkun jikser siequ biex jimxi fil-bankin.
Li se jkollna nagħmlu u illi il-mistoqsijiet wara li fadal ħajġu.
Cultural changes. The word deinstitutionalization is such a big word. It's not an easy concept that can be done overnight, and I think it's changing people's attitudes, people's understanding, and it's, like I said, a general cultural change is needed.
Okay, so could you walk us through what CRPD is doing in all of this? Whoever, maybe Rhoda can begin.
Okay, so we have a number of areas where we have to work, especially with regards to deinstitutionalization. This is a long-term process. This is not something that's happening overnight, and there is a need for identification of the gaps in the system. There is a need for additional services. There's a need for decent housing, and that means accessible housing. Last month we held a housing policy conference where the idea of building houses that could be adaptable in 3 tiers. The first tier was that they were fully accessible, the second tier was easily adaptable, and then there was a tier of housing that would be suitable for somebody who is disabled to at least be able to visit, so they would be able to use a bedroom and a bathroom and be able to get down the corridors. So there are a lot of things that need to be set up in order for us to be able to say that we are able to now to provide the support for disabled people to move out of institutions with the right level of support in order to be able to live in the community where they can make their own decisions and where they can be supported to do whatever they want to do, as opposed to being told what to do, which unfortunately happens in a lot of instances in institutions. One of the things that we do when we're trying to inform the public is we have disability equality training, which Christine provides. She'll be able to tell you a bit about that. And Chris is also working on EU projects. There are some areas that are very small that, but if they're not addressed, they still cause problems. So we have a project called EASE, looking at easy to read documentation and providing training. And that's something that Chris will be able to tell you about. And we look at a lot of projects related to autism and providing sensorial spaces that are good for people who have autism, and also for companies to provide autistic-friendly spaces. So we have a number of ways that we go out into the community in order to try and change perceptions. But there is obviously from the survey a real need to change perception in society, because if 53% of respondents still think that charity is the word that's most closely associated with disability, we still have a lot more awareness raising and training and project work to take part in order to be able to improve the situation.
Christopher, can you elaborate on this?
Thank you, yes. So yes, as Rhoda was just saying, one of our biggest projects this year is the EASE project, and this is a project that is based around producing easy language documents. There was some preliminary research done and found that there is a huge need for documents to be accessible in an easy to read format. So the CRPD are working with a fantastic trainer in Sweden who is currently developing a training package. We will be holding training in Malta at the beginning of next year with the aim to train members of the CRPD and other organisations in how to produce documents in an easy read format. We can then roll that out further afield throughout Malta, hopefully further, so that all documents can be available in an easy language format. Obviously this makes companies much more inclusive. If we're looking at company policies that can be very difficult to read and understand, having access in an easy format increases the accessibility to everybody.
And for those of us who are not familiar with the easy to read format, what does it look like? How is it different from a document we're used to reading?
Okay, so you would take, if we think of a company policy, we would take a huge company policy and we would break it down into key points. It would be a reduction of jargon, of long sentences, and it highlights the key points so that the message is still conveyed, but it's not lost in all of the legal terminologies that are not necessarily always needed. We also will be working on images, because images can become very overwhelming in among a lot of text, so this is reducing things down to a much more accessible format. And I think the way with that is that the EASE project will allow us to share that information with other companies that might not necessarily always think that this document should be accessible in an easy to read format.
It sounds to me like every document should be like that for everyone.
Yes, exactly.
Documents are produced, sometimes I believe documents are produced too complicated for no reason. But anyway, okay, so that's really interesting. Christine, again, because Rhoda said you have something to elaborate on here as well.
Iva, aħna il-unit jisimha Disability Quality Training, kif qalet tajjeb Rhoda ħafna żviluppajna, modernizzajna, ftaħna anke fuq ir-riċerka biex inkunu nistgħu ngħaddu aktar tarif u taħriġ lil kull min jitolbu. Nibdew minn skejjel, nkomplu għal livelli ogħla ta' edukazzjoni, dipartimenti tal-gvern, kumpanji privati, service providers, fejn aħna inkunu l-ewwel kuntatt li persuni hemm barra qed ikollhom ma' persuna b'diżabilità. Il-unit tagħna t-tim tiegħi kollha magħmula minn persuni b'diżabilitajiet differenti, għalhekk apparti li ngħaddu l-informazzjoni, aħna nistgħu ngħidu nibnu nimlew kull ħaġa li nitkellmu dwarha b'esperjenzi personali biex wieħed ikun jista' jifhem aħjar il-ħaġa għalfejn għandha ssir hekk, mhux għax bil-liġi, mhux għax hekk jitlob, però inti kollok idea ċara għaliex importanti jkollok rampa, għaliex importanti li jkollok bażi ta' taħriġ ta' lingwa ta' sinjali. Jew għalfejn għandek tippreżenta informazzjoni b'mod audio, mhux bil-kitba biss, għalfejn importanti li easy to read language, easy language. Issa ngħidula għal persuni b'diżabilità. Kif qal ukoll Bernard aħna noħorġu mill-ideal tal-charity model. Dan it-taħriġ bażikament ikun qisu ta' satejn, più o meno, u mbagħad dejjem nadattaw skont il-bżonn tal-persuni, l-kumpanija jew il-min qed inkellmu, dejjem ikun is-suġġett li jażlu huma li nitkellmu dwaru u nidħlu ftit l-ewwel naraw kemm jafu l-persuni, nagħtuhom xi kwizzi u xi ħaġa, ħalli nkunu nafu aħna fuq xi xirdu nafsu, u mbagħad nidħlu fuq il-modelli ta' diżabilità. Kif kont ngħid kif semma Bernard, il-modell soċjali huwa l-ideali li inti mhux tipprova tbiddel il-persuna, però tadatta l-ambjent, tadatta l-informazzjoni, tadatta l-mod kif inti tikkomunika biex il-persuna jkollha opportunitajiet daqs ħaddieħor li jagħmel l-istess ħaġa. U mbagħad nidħlu fit-terminoloġija għax di kultant għandna nsibu naqra skum di tabja li l-persuna tkunx taf kif għandha tindirizza, u mbagħad nidħol anke naqra fil-liġi. X'qed tissalvagwardja l-liġi, li ma punti, li ma artikli. U nispjegaw naqra mhux biex inbeżżaw la taqla xi multa, però biex inti tkun taf li l-persuna għandu dritt u li inti għandek dmir li timplementa dak li qed tisma'. U mbagħad nidħlu aktar f'ħafna dettall fejn tidħol l-etikett. L-etikett hija l-mod kif inti tkellem, iġġib ruħek, kif tapproachja, tiġi xi dubju għandek xtejn jew le lill-persuna b'diżabilità. Dawn huma prattiċi, tips prattiċi biex tnaħħi l-iskomdità, forsi l-mistija, meta inti qed tiltaqa' ma' persuna b'diżabilità. U s-sabiħ tagħha il-ħaġa hija li meta wieħed jew waħda bħali, pereżempju niqsam il-vista, qed tagħtik dawn it-tips, inti qed tisma' esperjenza diretta li jien qed ngħaddi minnha u tista' staqsini direttament li jekk għandek xi dubji, aħna kollha open ħafna, inwiġbu ħafna domandi, ġieli jkunu naqra forsi diskrepanti u ġieli jkunu ħfief biex tweġibhom, però naħsbu li dik hija l-aħjar mod kif inti tkun tista' tifhem aħjar u tkun motivat li għandek timplementa xi ħaġa għal ġid mhux tiegħek biss, għax persuna b'diżabilità tiswa ħafna, tista' tagħti ħafna b'esperjenza tagħna. Dil-unit qed ngħidlek kollha persuni b'diżabilità għaddejjin gazdawn nista' ngħid, nagħmlu ħafna riċerka wkoll, pereżempju jekk jinbidel xi artiklu tal-liġi, jekk tidħol trend ġdida, aħna nagħmlu riċerki ħalli nkun nistgħu nagħtu dan it-tarif hemm barra.
Kien interessanti, verament interessanti. U kif qed titkellem fuq liġi, I'd like to ask Rhoda, what the CRPD is doing in terms of policy making, in terms of what policies are you most pushing legislators or policy makers to implement?
So obviously, CRPD have a policy advisory role. We are past EU policies and also pieces of legislation that are national in order to give our opinions on them. We also hold very regular meetings with various different ministries and different entities. You will see later in the panels we have people from employment, people from education, and so it's not necessarily always dealing at government level, but sometimes what you need is to be able to speak to the people on the ground who are actually responsible for providing, for example, the education, and talking about how their policies are affecting people with disabilities, and we can link that then to the complaints that we get, so that we can ask for solutions to be put in place. So that won't necessarily be national policies, sometimes they're internal policies, but what we aim to do is to look at the areas where policy is actually affecting the inclusion of disabled people and hold meetings and discussions and persuade and cajole those people in order to be able to provide a better solution that's more inclusive for disabled people.
How does it usually go?
I think we're okay. You know, things always take longer than the members of the public want. I always have people telling me, why haven't you taken them to court, when I'm arranging the first meeting so that we can discuss the issue with them. And CRPD do have the ability to take people to court where we feel that things are not working well. That has happened in the past with the MUT. But the way that we generally manage to resolve things is by discussion and by putting forward recommendations, giving ideas about the way things should be done, and looking at the way things are being done and providing alternate solutions. So it can take a while, but usually we get a good compromise, if not the solution that we're looking for.
CRPD also has an investigation and compliance arm, which is run by Bernard. Sorry, I forgot to switch to Maltese. L-ewwel jisu mistoqsija hi, spjega x'tistgħu u x'ma tistgħux tagħmlu f'dan id-dipartiment u x'għamiltu. Imma hemm ftit misconceptions ta' x'tistgħu x'ma tistgħux tagħmlu wkoll.
Mela, mill-lat ta' investigazzjonijiet, aħna naraw jekk persuna ġiġ diskriminata b'bażi ta' diżabilità. Ġifieri persuna taffiċinata tgħidilna li ħassitha diskriminata ħabba diżabilità, aħna naraw ftit il-kwistjoni x'inhi, inkellmu lin-naħa l-oħra u nippruvaw insibu soluzzjoni. Issa, ħafna drabi soluzzjoni tinstab li tkun ukoll għas-sodisfazzjon tal-persuna. Ġifieri, kombinazzjoni il-bieraħ nidejna il-rapport annwali għas-sena 2023 u dak li għandu x'jaqsam mal-investigazzjonijiet u kellna 320 każ illi jingħalaq għas-sodisfazzjon ta' min ikkomplejna. Qed ngħidu mill-każijiet li għalaqna 88%. Okay? Issa, jista' jkun hemm xi ħadd illi jiġi għand il-Kummissjoni jgħidilna jiena ħassejtni diskriminat minħabba diżabilità tiegħi għax dak id-dipartiment ma qadinix sew. Meta tmur tfittex ftit x'ġara ma ġarax, tirrealizza li tkun kwistjoni ta' amministrazzjoni ħażina pereżempju. Il-persuna tħossha ħażin u tħossha illi naqsuha l-awtoritajiet. Jiena nkun f'pożizzjoni antipatika li ngħidilha isma' għandek raġun li tħossok ħażin, imma mhix diskriminazzjoni. Dan huwa każ li jrid imur pereżempju għand l-Ombudsman li hu jinvestiga każijiet ta' mal-administration. Jew inkella xi ħadd li xtara battri ta' wheelchair ħa, pereżempju, u wara ftit tal-qitlu u tal-ħanut ma jrid itih replacement jew whatever. Jiena naf li hemm post ieħor li iktar jistgħu jagħtu ħajnuna, this is a mis-sold product. Tifhem? Ġifieri għandek l-awtorità tal-konsumatur. Ikollok min jgħidlek imma jiena għandi diżabilità u inti l-Kummissjoni. Hemm ukoll ċertu idea illi l-Kummissjoni hija l-bidu u tmiem ta' kollox. L-isfortunatament mhuwiex hekk. Aħna li nistgħu naraw huwa każijiet fejn il-kawża għalfejn ġejt trattat ħażin hija proprjament id-diżabilità. Pereżempju fuq il-post tax-xogħol, anti għandek diżabilità, pereżempju ma tantx tiflaħ timxi. U l-boss tiegħek ma jridx bl-ebda mod jirriservalek parking fil-grounds ta' fejn taħdem, pereżempju. Dik hija kwestjoni li jisma' rridu mmorru hemmhekk u nkellmuh nikkonvinċuh. Allura irridu wkoll illi nispjegaw ir-rwol tagħna kif x'inhu għalhekk importanti li huwa d-diskriminazzjoni għabbażi ta' diżabilità. Hemm ħafna xi tgħid ġifieri. Però l-iktar oqsma li naraw huma dak tal-aċċessibilità, tal-edukazzjoni, tax-xogħol, djar, li inti tinqeda minn xi ħanut jew minn xi service provider, servizzi tas-saħħa, dawk huma li għandu x'jaqsam mal-investigazzjonijiet. Dak li għandu x'jaqsam mal-compliance huwa x-xogħol illi jagħmlu sħabna, qegħdin hawnhekk ukoll, illi jivvetjaw pjanti illi ġew iddepożitati mal-Planning Authority. Meta inti tapplika l-permess tal-bini, tal-iżvilupp, inti daħħal il-pjanti il-Planning Authority, Planning Authority marbuta bil-liġi li tikkonsulta ma' ċertu entitajiet fosthom aħna kummissjoni u aħna jkollna ġeneralment 30 ġurnata biex naraw daw il-pjanti. Jekk ma nirrispondux dawk il-30 ġurnata, ifisser li għalina all-right. Jiġifieri sħabi tal-compliance dejjem ġlieda mal-ħin biex nlaħqu ma' dan ix-xogħol voluminus. Ġifieri il-Planning Authority toħroġ minn għalija is-sena diġà laqet xi 7,000 applikazzjoni. Mhux għaddithom kollha ġifieri, waslu għandna. Aħna rridu naraw li ma jinkwadraw taħt il-manzjonijiet tal-Kommissjoni, li dak ukoll biċċa xogħol kbira, u mbagħad tattakka dawk li trid tara int. Ġifieri hemm xogħol naqra mhux ħażin.
Rhoda, on another subject, one of the biggest headaches for families who have members of their family with disability is expensive therapies, especially for children, which is a bit unfair. What is, if anything, the CRPD doing to alleviate that burden?
So, there's a therapy tax credit scheme which was introduced in 2023, I think, were the first set of applications that we received. And this meant that for parents who needed to go to private therapists in order to be able to get therapies for their children because the waiting lists were too long or they couldn't get into an NHS hospital, they were allowed to claim back €200 against the cost of the therapies that had been provided, and all that they had to do was fill in a form and send a copy of the invoice to me, and we then dealt with the tax department who process the applications and give you a therapy tax credit on your tax return in the following year. I have to say this hasn't been €200 was not deemed a very large amount considering the cost of therapies, and in 2024 the limit was increased to €500, which was a bit closer in my mind but still not quite enough. And one of the things that CRPD were also concerned about was the fact that because this was processed through the therapy as a tax credit, if you didn't work or if you didn't earn enough money in order to pay tax, you couldn't apply for the scheme. And for my mind, that seemed very unjust because the people who needed it the most were not able to access it. And so, whilst for 2024, because of the tax rules that are in place, we have to continue with the tax therapy. From 2025, there will be a system of direct payments that are made, and you will still be able to download a form from CRPD's website, but we won't be putting these things through the tax system, which means that hopefully the payments will be made a little bit quicker than they have been in the past. And also we have increased the amount that has been offered from 500 to 750. And I think now we're getting a little bit closer towards a reasonable amount to provide for people who are having to buy therapy for their children from private therapists. So it's an ongoing procedure, but I think every year we manage to tweak it a little bit more. As with a lot of things, it's a gradual process. You put something in place, you realise how it's not working, you tweak it a bit, and I think now we're getting a bit closer to something that is equitable for parents.
The final question is about pushing for better mental health and neuroaffirmative support. Will there be a push for that? And what can be changed in the mental health sector to help persons with disabilities?
Yeah, I think that in the last year, CRPD has done a lot of work with the Mental Health Commissioner. We have looked at the issues of people with mental health conditions not being able to access allowances, which is being addressed. We also need to recognise that neuro-affirmative support is something that's really important and needs to be addressed quite urgently. It's a very hot potato because there are lots of different therapies and systems that are out there, and as the regulator, I have to be very, very careful that what I am pushing for is going to be a good system. But I think that the improvement in awareness of conditions like autism and the need to provide not just ramps and hearing loops and braille, but also to provide quiet spaces, to be able to provide a box of fidget toys, to be able to accept that people don't always do things the same way, you know? And we accept that when it's somebody who has a physical disability. Everybody accepts that when I go up a flight of stairs, it's going to take longer. But if you are neurodiverse and you are sitting and fiddling and twitching and you are fiddling with your fingers because that's what keeps you in a comfortable space, that's not always accepted. And so there needs to be a lot more awareness made of that. And I think that whilst it's a different thing, the acceptance of people with mental health conditions also needs to be dramatically improved, because we have a situation whereby employers are worried, schools are worried, and we need to make sure that there is awareness about how people with mental health conditions can be included in society, in all areas of life that they want to be, in exactly the same way as somebody with a physical or a sensorial or an intellectual impairment has.
Thank you. ħaniftħu il-mistoqsijiet mill-udjenza jekk hawn min jixtieq ħajġi ħadd bil-mikrofon naħseb u x'hekk. Mela qed nara tnejn hemmhekk.
So I have a few comments, but I don't want to hog the discussion. So with regards to autism and ADHD and hidden disabilities, I find a very big problem when it comes to accessibility at hospital. So when you go to hospital, if you're in a wheelchair, if you have mobility issues, you're dealt with in a very different way. And if you have autism, if you have ADHD, you do not have any sort of accessibility, different people do not understand. I feel most nurses, most doctors are not trained to deal with autistic patients, and everything that comes with it, like phobias, bodily phobias, like personal space issues, etc. So when you talk about training, is that something that you would consider? Because I feel that whenever I go to hospital with my father, I feel like I have to prepare a document myself and hand it to every nurse and doctor that has to deal with him, because otherwise he's going to have a meltdown, and he's not going to get his treatment. They're going to hold him down. He's a grown man, so it's going to be a problem. You know what I mean? It's obviously embarrassing because people just look down and say, "Oh, come on, you're a grown man," and it's very embarrassing and very demeaning for a person with disability to have to go through that. So that is one of my comments.
I would just like to, before Christine talks about what she provides in terms of training, we had, when the new CEO of Mater Dei took over, Bernard and I went for a meeting with him, and we had a list of about 40 things that needed to be put right in the hospital, and a lot of those were related to autism. We've asked for the provision of quiet spaces, we've asked for changes in the appointment system, we have asked for notes. I have been pushing for some of the information from the disability register to be included in the hospital's register. Nothing medical, but at least a type of impairment, and maybe if they need to be able to skip a queue, or whether they need to have a quiet space. And this is something that he was very amenable to. So I am hoping that as we go through the amendments that we've asked for, that some of these will be put in place reasonably quickly. I will let Christine talk about the training that she does with regards to autism.
Christine?
Thank you. What I would like to share is that back in 2020 we had a funded project from the European Social Fund, where it was felt that all persons working in Mater Dei, and even those with the contractors, needed to have general information about the etiquette. We spoke about what the impairment in itself means, how a person feels about it, and what were the things that weren't going well at hospital, both in outpatient and inpatient areas. So we had to make a video, because we found out that we needed to deliver to about 80 lectures credits per week, which was impossible, because back then I was the only trainer in this unit. So we came up with this video through the ESF. And this is being shown to doctors who already are licensed, to those who are in training, nurses, and other staff. But since this is not enough, even from complaints we have had through the investigations unit, next year, this coming year, we are also working with the Directorate for Disability Issues, where we will just focus on the autism spectrum itself, and we will be having today closed seminar with general practitioners, medical doctors, those residing both in hospital and in private clinics, and this will be a today. We will be also having foreign speakers who they themselves are medicals and who also are on the spectrum. So we are really hoping there that something fruitful will come out, and we can continue this kind of training once the seminar is over.
Anyone else on the
Is that, for example, in airports, they use a system of lanyards, where you can actually wear a lanyard. It doesn't say, I have a disability. It would just be, you know, like a particular emblem or the CRP or whatever, so that people dealing with people with a disability, invisible disabilities especially, would know at the airport, at hospital, and that would help, you know, help them sort of realize, okay, this person might need different accessibility needs. So perhaps that could be an option.
The sunflower lanyard is something that's currently being discussed in the Autism Council. But if you, when you book your ticket at the airport, you say that you need assistance because you're autistic, you will be given appropriate support and taken through quiet corridors, rather than being made to stand in the queues with hundreds of people.
The CRPD are also partners in a project whereby we have just worked on the transport sector, and that includes airports and such. And we were doing some research in a fantastic airport in Japan, where they have individualized quiet booths at key areas throughout the airport,
and part of our research was to obviously inform the project partners within Europe of what is happening globally as to recommendations that can be put in place. This would included lanyards, it also included signage to highlight points about lanyards so that there's more awareness out there, especially in key areas like we said, such as airports. Other partners were working on education, hospitals and such, so there was a collective understanding when there's policies and guidelines made. So it was very interesting that you said that. This one in Japan was just, it was revolutionary when you looked at these tools and aids that they had in place at not just at the front doors of the airport, it was at all the key kind of high stress areas where they're going to be utilised much more. So that was kind of some of the project that we are currently involved in.
Mela, we'll take miegħek l-aktar għandi konfidenza għalek ta'.
Hello? Tismawni? Naħseb jiena illi waħda mill-affarijiet illi issejjem. L-iktar ħaġa naħseb jiena li trid tkompli ssir huwa li nkomplu nafsu fuq li nwasslu l-messaġġ. Ma nistgħux ngħidu għax forsi naqtaw qalbna, ejja ngħidu hekk. Il-messaġġ irid ikompli jasal, jekk hemm bżonn forsi nbidlu il-mod ta' kif jasal il-messaġġ. Imma irridu nkomplu ninformaw lin-nies, irridu nkomplu nispjegaw x'inhu dal-kunċett għalfejn li mhux kwistjoni ta' kapriċċ illi qed innafsu fuqu u illi fl-aħħar mill-aħħar jekk jiġi implementat, is-soċjetà kollha ħadd gawdi minnu.
Jiena naċċer x'inhu bid-distituzzjonalizzazzjoni?
Kellek fis-survey kważi kollha kienu hemmhekk. Le, il-fatt illi jiena kelma waħda li toġobni fejn għandu x'jaqsam il-qasam tad-diżabilità li forsi ma tistemmiex hija empowerment. Il-ħoss li persuni b'diżabilità għadhom wisq dipendenti fuq ħadd ieħor. Ġifieri mod u minn ieħor. Għandek iktar bżonn li persuni b'diżabilità jieħdu rajhom f'idejhom f'ħajjithom. Issa inti meta tieħu rajk f'idejk f'ħajtek, meta tieħu l-istat tiegħek jew meta tikber jew whatever, inti tiddeċiedi xi trid tagħmel b'ħajtek. Naturalment mhux kulħadd jista' jagħmilha din ħaġa, imma ma jfissirx għax mhux kulħadd jista' jagħmilha ma nippruvawx inwasslu lil dak li jkun sal-iktar li jista' jasal. Allura aħna ma nistgħux ma nħoss li l-soċjetà għandha timponi fuq dak li jkun kif għandu jgħix, ma' min għandu jgħix, fiex ħin iqum, fiex ħin jiekol, fiex ħin imur jorqod. Jekk għandu xi mur xogħol jew le, tifhem. Ġifieri il-kunċett bħala ħsieb huwa li inti ikollok kif kien hemm ukoll fis-survey agency fuq id-deċiżjoni tiegħek. Issa, kif tista' tagħmilha b'mod tangibbli? Mela il-fatt li il-komunitajiet tagħna ikunu miftuħa b'mod illi persuna b'diżabilità tista' tgħix bħala parti mill-komunità mhux segregata f'xi dar. Diġà huwa differenti. Bl-ebda disrispett min imexxi istituzzjonijiet jiġifieri x'għamlu xogħol importantissimu. Imma iż-żminijiet jitolbu illi nagħmlu dak il-pass li jmiss. U dak naħseb jiena li għandna nkomplu nuru illi persuna b'diżabilità anke biex nikkombattu dik il-perċezzjoni ta' disabilità equals charity, karità. Li dik hija maġuna nħoss jiena fil-karattru Malti. Issa fi żmien il-miliet ikun hawn naqra teletons mhux ħażin. U mhux fi żmien il-miliet biss, matul is-sena kollha. Dejjem xi ġabra fuq it-television. Nifhem li huma bżonn jużi għal min irid imexxi ċertu għaqdiet. Imma l-impatt illi jħallu fuq in-nies speċjalment jekk mhux informati tajjeb, huwa illi jiena jekk darba fis-sena jew darbtejn fis-sena ndaħħal idi fil-but u nibgħat 10 euro. Biżżejjed. U qisni qed naħsel il-kuxjenza tiegħi milli pereżempju jien naf nipparkja quddiem rampa, nipparkja fuq kaxxablu minn hemm ikoll il-blue badge. Jiena ngħix ħajti u ma jgħixu ħajjithom 20 euros biżżejjed ħadd u nkun il-kuxjenza safja. Jien naħseb illi hemmhekk irridu nafsu, illi ma nistax ngħid ċertu diskors għax jiena ma mmexxix għadha li hija dipendenti fuq il-ġenerożità tal-poplu. Imma kieku jien ngħidu dak l-20 euro daħħalhom fejn ma jara x-xemx u rispetta d-drittijiet ta' persuni b'diżabilità. L-hemmhekk naħseb li
Ġvidik tfisser li rridu morru lejn l-idea ma nifhimx illi ma jkunx hawn djar u ma ssirx karità.
F'dinja ideali m'hawnx bżonn karità, ma f'dinja ideali aħna ma nifhimx.
Ma dejjem nimxu l-idea.
Aħna ma nimxux mal-anġ li fil-ġnien tal-ħedan u xek. Ġifieri, sfortunatament iva. L-idea li rridu nimxu leħ huwa li dak li jkun għandu biżżejjed riżorsi biex jiddetermina l-futur tiegħu. Sakemm naslu għal hemmhekk irridu nifhmu kif irridu naslu. Li eventwalment mhux bil-fors id-dar tingħalaq li fis-sens mhux l-entità tispiċċa, imma bħalma business beda 60 sen ilu mod u diversifika u kompla javvanza u ħadu id-din it-tielet ġenerazzjoni.
Jinbidel il-mudell.
Ekku.
Jinbidel il-mudell. Christopher? I'm asking, how do you think deinstitutionalization could and should be eradicated? I think it's
Thank you. Yes. I think following on from what Bernard was just saying, it's a huge concept that the CRPD have been looking at for a long time, and there's a lot of work that is needed within Malta to reach the concept of deinstitutionalisation from...
What kind of work?
I think it would be, there's a lot of policy making that is needed. There is a lot of multidisciplinary work with various agencies across Malta. This would be from residential care to hospital services. There's a lot of training that would be required.
Shouldn't be given things because we feel sorry for them, but they need to have them because they deserve them, then this is a number that we need to shift, and that will be part of awareness raising that we will obviously need to increase. And I would implore other people who are working in the sector who are here that this is something that obviously needs to be addressed, because it's a very long time since the UNCRPD was created in 2006. We've been a part of that from the start, and yet almost 20 years later they still think that charity is what disability means to them rather than rights. So that's something that obviously as a society needs to change. Have you heard of CRPD? 59.18% of the population have heard of CRPD. I have to say that fits quite well with my experience, because when I say to people in Rabat where I live that I work for CRPD, they say, the accountants, and I have to explain to them, no, that's that's not CRPD, that's KPMG. It's different, just a bit. And I will then go on to explain to them, but we will be working on awareness raising campaigns over the next year to try and improve the situation. This one is the one that I was really, really enthusiastic to look at. And it gives, tells what percentage of the people who replied to the survey thought that we did. So providing advice, 96%, advice on policy, 96%, awareness raising, 95%. These are all really good percentages. EU disability card, 93%. That's fantastic, except that we don't. That's Agencia Support, in case any of you thought that we still did, the EU disability card. Inspecting buildings, re-accessibility, 92%. Providing disability equality training, 90%. That's really good, and I think that's a very high, much higher mark than I was expecting, which is reflected by the fact that we have expanded the disability equality training team. And last year, in 2023, we trained over 7,000 people in Malta. So I think that's a good reflection on how effective that team has been. Doing conferences, 89%. Blue badge applications, 87, unfortunately, another one that we don't do. But a very high percentage who think that we do. And whilst this may be vaguely amusing, it's actually quite frustrating for us, and I imagine also for Agencia Support, because we get very grumpy clients who come to the office to pick up their blue badge to be told it's not here. We don't do it. You have to go somewhere else. And so building awareness about the fact that the EU disability card and the blue badge are both offered now by Agencia Support is something that we need to work on. 85% said investigating discrimination, that's good. Checking planning applications, re-accessibility, that's 80%. Enforcement of blue badges, 79%. Providing financial assistance, 75%. I wish I had the budget to provide financial assistance. We don't provide financial assistance, unfortunately. The New Hope Housing Guarantee, that got 57%, and I think that's quite a good response. It's low, but the New Hope scheme has only been running for, I think, 2 or 3 years. We don't have that many people who are turned down, or disabled people who are actually in a position probably to apply for a mortgage anyway. So the fact that 57% of the general population know that there is a scheme to assist people with purchasing a house and being able to get life insurance, which is the reason that the New Hope Housing Guarantee was set up, because disabled people find it very difficult to get the life insurance that you require in order to have a mortgage. So whilst it's low, I think that's quite a good result. And there were some other things that amounted to 12%. What do you think are the most pressing issues in the disability sector in Malta and Gozo today? 91% think that blue badge abuse is the most pressing issue. Increasing public perceptions, 89.4%. Physical accessibility, 84.8%. Inclusive education, 79.6%. Employment, 77.6%. Improving training and services, 75.6%. More sensorial accessibility and autism-friendly space awareness, 71.8%. Deinstitutionalisation, which we have really been banging on about for quite a while now, 71%. The fragmentation of services, 69.2%. And again, there were a few other things that, but these are an interesting, that it covers an awful lot of the areas that we receive complaints about. So it reflects, on the whole, what our perception of public perceptions are. So that sort of like made us realise that the things that we need to concentrate on are really the things that we need to concentrate on. Have you ever contacted CRPD? Only 35.8%, so that's quite low. That could well be because since only 8% of the respondents had a disability, that is low. But again, that's something that hopefully with an awareness raising campaign that we will be running will improve. Incidentally, I'm going to run this marketing survey again next year to see how the marketing and the awareness raising that we can do has improved these numbers. Why did you contact CRPD? So for general info on disability, 44.3%. investigating discrimination, 36.6%, blue badges, 28.6%, and compliance, 18.6%. So there's a number of areas that people are contacting us about. Other is very high at 41.3, but we provide advice on almost everything related to the disability service, and people do tend to come to us as a first port of call in the same way that they do with the 153 helpline, so that they can find out from us where they need to go. How were you satisfied with the responses you received? So we said 65.2% said yes, 28% said there was a delay in response or that we didn't help. Others was 22.8%, and no services provided, which means that it wasn't something that we were able to assist them with, was 20%. So again, I think that's something that we need to work on. But with the limited staffing resources that we have, we are doing the best we can at the moment. Have you ever contacted CRPD because of alleged discrimination, and was your case resolved to your satisfaction? This is good, because 73% of the population felt that their case had been resolved to their satisfaction. The no's, 26.8%, could also include people for whom there was no discrimination case, but they felt that there was. And we can obviously only go by the laws that we are there to enforce. Would you ever contact CRPD if you or a family member felt discriminated against? Again, this is very high, 77%. Do you know that CRPD is monitoring body for the implementation of the UN-CRPD? This is low, but this is where we have we need to move away from this towards the rights aspect from the charity aspect, and I suspect that the two are linked in some way. It's also a fairly recent bill that's been passed, and since we still have 97% of the population that think that we do EU disability cards, maybe it's going to take a bit longer before they realise that we monitor UN-CRPD. Do you behave differently when a person's disability is more visible? 83.2% said yes, and that's very interesting, and that's something that, again, we need to be looking at more closely and finding different solutions for, because there are a large number of people in Malta and Gozo who have hidden disabilities, and if they are treated differently by people because they are invisible, then that's a bit of a problem. Are you satisfied with the work that is being done when it comes to the level of physical accessibility in public spaces? This was higher than I was expecting, because it's the area that we get the most complaints about, and 59.8% said that they were happy with the work that we are trying to do in order to improve physical accessibility. What do you think deinstitutionalisation means? Again, this is something we've been working on with support and with the ministry for a long time now, several years. 78% said the freedom to choose how and with whom and where to live. 68.5% said the closure of all residents for persons with disability. 66.5% said a network of services that create a supportive society and an environment for persons with disability living in the community. And 49.5% said agency over one's decisions. I was quite happy with these results, because we have spent a lot of time on it. Deinstitutionalisation is not an easy concept. It's not something that the Maltese population are familiar with. It's not something that they're really necessarily comfortable with. So the fact that they understand that these are the sorts of ideas that go behind deinstitutionalisation, I think, is positive. That will do. I think now we have